Hello again, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to Mono Audio. I am Cecil Nick, your friendly neighborhood sound goblin. Today, we're going to talk about vocal production. This question comes from the Beats to Play Games 2 Discord server, asked by composer, illustrator, and silly bird Avi, with some fun parameters by composer and cat lover Jamie Wynn Whitmarsh. Links to that server and those cool artists down below. So here's the thing, this is going to be more of a breakdown process video than it is a strict tutorial, so I'm not going to explain how all the tools work, but I am going to explain how and why I use them. So let's take a listen to the final mix, and then I'll slowly peel back the effects to reveal the dry vocal.
Gotta know right now what's that writing on your shelf in bathrooms and bad motels. No one really cared for it at all. Not the gravity plan.
Now that we've heard that, as I break everything down, I'm going to have a couple tips, none of which use specific software. Some of them are not even specific to vocal production, like be organized, label your tracks, make groups. I understand the argument that this can get in the way of your creative flow, but if you make it a habit, it takes less than a second to rename a track. Even just naming it Vox Vocal can save you a lot of headache in the future. Old and busted, new hotness. Next, be intentional. I try to always approach a vocal with an end result in mind. Whether or not I actually know how to get there is a different matter. Most of the time, I do not. But all vocal production starts with a vocal performance, and having an idea of where you want to go is a great guide to start with. Like if you know you want a crazy reverb sound, record with that on, assuming your CPU will let you. On this song, I always knew I wanted a heavy auto-tune, so I recorded with the effect already on, which changed how I performed. Even if you haven't figured out exactly how to get there, having an intent, A+. Once you have a vocal recorded, it's time to be specific, which on the surface seems very similar to be intentional, but this is the step where I crack open the bag of tools. So let's actually start to go through this effects chain. Suit up. When I'm working, I generally conceptualize two types of changes, repair and color. To help with that, I'm a big fan of using multiple stages of effects like EQ or compression, rather than trying to make one instance do all of the work. So let's start at the beginning and work our way through. First is my kind of repair chain, which is a gate, some EQ, and a de-esser. The gate, just there to cut out headphone noise in between phrases. You could just manually do that. In fact, there are places where I have. I usually track with the gate on, so it helps cut out stuff like while tracking. Also, I made this really fast, and it helps when working fast. Next is a cleanup EQ. So let's just turn this on and off once or twice.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now what's that writing on your...
This one feels subtle, which is the intent here. Not quite transparent, but close. It looks like I did do some tone shaping, but mostly at this stage what I'm trying to do is answer how much low frequency content can I cut, and is there any unwanted frequency buildup? When finding where to cut, I'm a big fan of going too far and then pulling back. Starting with this high pass filter, what I'm gonna do is let it play and just bring it up until my voice sounds really thin, and then back it off.
Oh, see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything?
It looks like I can go to about 80 before I start to lose like the chest voice sound of my voice. So I'm just gonna cut everything below that. Then I'm gonna do like some frequency sweeping and try to find any resonances. So I'm gonna make this Q a little more narrow, and we're just gonna bump the gain up really high. And then I'm gonna use my controller to sweep through with a knob. Love physical knobs if you have a way to use them. Works just as fine with a mouse though. When looking for resonances, it's important to remember with any kind of singing part like this that obviously a held note is a resonance. So what I'm going to be trying to find is any sort of like sound that's built up that is constant. And let's try to find it. I know there is one because I can see it, but I'm going to use my ears.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything? Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything?
This region is kind of...
It isn't anything at all.
It's like squonky. That's not a word, but you know what I mean, right? It's just kind of squonky. I don't like it. And when you have a track like this, where there's multiple vocals, you're stacking them up, these resonances, especially you start adding compression, things like that, can add up on top of each other. And it's a bad vibe for me. So I obviously cut some of that out with this EQ on the track. It looks like I also did a little boost basically in the high mids and highs with a little bit of a cut to try and keep the sibilant range from also boosting. You can probably hear the siren. Every time I record, there's a siren. Is it my fault? Oh no. So I did this mid-high boosting, try to keep the sibilance from boosting. In this pop-ish style I'm going for, vocals tend to be on the brighter side of things, and this SM7B that I record with tends to be on the dark side of things. So this is very slight. This is 2.38 dB, and this one is also like 2.8, and then just a -2 to keep this middle range if I turn this on and off, just to keep this like 6 kilohertz range from also being boosted, which leads into the de-esser to get rid of our sibilance. And this one is just trying to catch these S sounds. Where you put a de-esser in your vocal chain is somewhat up to debate. Sometimes I have it as my very first effect, sometimes at the end, sometimes in the middle. Doesn't really matter as long as you have an intent and be specific. I know that Waves Tune gets kind of distorted in the sibilance range, especially, I don't know if it's every voice, but I notice it a lot on my voice. So I've just cut some S's. Why don't I turn this on and off?
Early, gotta see, gotta see, gotta see, gotta.
This instance is kind of subtle.
Gotta see, gotta see.
You can see it's kind of cutting things down. And this one is set so that it's got a pretty kind of high threshold, so it takes a while to turn on, and then it turns down a lot once it turns on. I also have another instance of a de-esser here on the other side, and this is to catch the opposite end, and it turns on sooner with a lower threshold, but it also reduces things less. So here is the S's with both of them together.
Gotta see, gotta know right now. Gotta see.
And why don't we just solo these and try to hear exactly what they're affecting? Right? And if I monitor the other, right, it's picking it up a bit faster and turning it down a bit more, which is great. I'm just trying to clamp down those S's so that I can later try to get things as bright as possible. Also here in my Waves Tune cleanup rack, I've got some gentle compression. It's a slower attack with a kind of medium release, not a huge ratio going on. And if I play, you'll see in this bottom right area that we're only really averaging 2 to 3 dB of compression.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that right?
A couple spikes up to almost 5 dB. And then I've got a 2 dB boost on the output. My goal here isn't to make the vocal louder. That's not what I'm trying to do right now. In fact, I'm going to turn it on and off, and ideally, we won't hear the difference, or like a subtle difference.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now.
Let's use that phrase.
Gotta see, gotta know. Gotta see, gotta know. Gotta see, gotta know.
Right? I can tell on that gotta, that big, like, plosive bit of energy, that it's turning it down. But other than that, it sounds pretty much the same, which is the goal. I just want to turn the loud stuff down a little bit, bring the quiet stuff up. And that'll help feed the other plugins like a better, more consistent signal. Bonus fact, recording to tape has this property naturally. Some people are like, oh, there's too much compression these days. Recording to tape introduces like natural compression. So we've kind of always been using multiple stages of compression. Take that, purists. I don't know how you identify, but we love multiple stages of compression. We're going to come back to this little altar boy. I'll talk about that in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about, I've done something I usually don't do. In fact, I usually tell people not to do it, which is I have an inline reverb on this vocal. I'm a big fan normally of using your send and return channels, because then you can use a reverb as like a glue. You can send lots of different things. In fact, if I solo my reverb return, we'll hear there are like various different vocals inside of it. It's not just the main vocal in there. In this case, I wanted the main vocal to sound like it wasn't recorded in my kind of small room. So there's just an ambience that's only on this vocal. I'm almost thinking of it like a guitar pedal, like it's something that's just on this sound. It doesn't need to blend other sounds together. And I'll turn this on and off. You'll see it's kind of adding some stereo width, and then it is kind of doing a little bit of compression-y feeling stuff.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything?
Right? It's just like spreading it out, kind of making it sound bigger without having to do crazy stereo widening. Simple. I'm a big fan of simple, which is why I also love a channel strip. This is the Sheps Omni channel, and this is doing a bunch of work here. So I'll do the same thing. I'll turn this on and off a couple times.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on?
This is where a lot of my color is coming from. Not a whole lot here. There's an extra high-pass filter, low cut. And why do that again? I already did it earlier. Well, this at certain points, this little altar boy adds some extra low frequency content after everything else. So I just wanted to cut some of that out as well. And then gate and de-esser are off because I'm doing that work earlier. In this case, I don't need to duplicate it. This stage of EQ, only 2 moves here. So let's turn these on and off, and I'll kind of explain what I was trying to do with these.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that?
As I mentioned, it's kind of a brighter style. So I've got the very tip top way up 11K, like a 4 dB boost.
Oh, gotta see.
Just like bringing that top end a little more shiny. And then also cutting some more like honky bits, so like a slightly higher frequency. So I don't know if it was either an additional...
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now.
Yeah, it's not good. Not a good frequency. And then nothing else on this one, which makes sense because I did some tone shaping on that very first EQ. It's normally something I would save here. I bet I liked... Actually, yeah. I bet I liked... Let's copy... Let's do an experiment. We're going to copy this to over here. And then we'll turn off the low cut and that stuff. And so we don't mess this one up, let's copy it again and then turn off this stuff. And I bet what we find is that I liked how this sounded going into the waves tune, right? I might have liked how that extra presence boost sounded affecting the tuning plugin.
Oh, gotta see, gotta know right now. What's that writing on your everything?
And then back with this one.
Oh, gotta see.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, it's driving some of the characteristics of the tuning a little bit harder. And honestly, that's something that some people might not like, but I kind of like it. It's kind of crunchy. Gives it a little bit more flavor, like La Croix. And the very last thing here is another stage of compression. And this is where I was trying to get it a little bit louder. And it is subtle. I'm going to see if I can find a particularly quiet part that will show kind of where it comes out.
Early in the morning. Early in the morning. And falls up early.
Yeah, so if I switch to the output meter on this plugin, you can see dry.
Early.
That peak comes up to 5, and then with the compressor, it comes up to 3-ish.
Early.
So it's just a little bit louder, which is actually used in conjunction, really only breaking down the chain on this main vocal, but I also have some compression on the vocal bus to bring all of the different vocals together a little bit more. So why don't we just take a listen to that as well while we're here? Might as well. Why not? Let's go.
Early in the morning and falls all down my sore feet. I wanna go back.
Yeah, and where you would notice this the most is on these like hard panned weird vocals.
Early in the morning and falls all.
It just pulls those in terms of volume. It pulls them a little bit closer to the main vocal.
Early in the morning and falls all.
And let's talk about those, because my last tip is somewhat directly contradictory to the other ones, and that is to be messy. Try stuff that is weird as hell, that someone might be like, that is bad and you shouldn't do it. Those are my favorite things most of the time. Maybe sometimes people are right. I shouldn't have done it, but I did anyway. So I did a little bit of kind of like text painting in this first chorus. The song is, of course, a cover of Gravity Rides Everything by Modest Mouse that I just like did one weekend for no reason. I was inspired. And I've done some wonky automation with this plugin called Little Alter Boy, which is a pitch and formant shifting plugin. And essentially, I've automated pitch and formant as well as this sort of mix between dry and wet to go interesting places. And the lyric that I'm sort of trying to reinforce here is it all will fall right into place. So I'm just going to let a little bit of this play through.
Emotions and the things that you say, it all will fall right into place as fruit drops, flesh it sex, everything will fall right into place when we die.
Let's talk about that right there. I'm going to solo this lead vocal. This is where some weird borderline atonal, I don't know, hear it in solo.
Flesh it sex, everything will fall right into place.
Just pure sweeping through pitch without any regard to key. Love it. It's messy, but sounds super great in context. There's also those weird background vocals, and they are using the same MIDI that I played for the lead instrument, and I'm feeding the tuning plugin that. So instead of being like tune to the key, I'm telling it to tune to this specific notes that it's being fed, and that gets wild. Let's solo those. It's just weird. I like being intentional. I like being specific, but sometimes I like being messy just a little bit more. Avi and Jamie, I hope I answered your question, or at least part of it. If anyone else has a question they would like me to answer, leave a comment below. Do all the YouTube stuff while you're there. Or reach out to me on Instagram at MonoNoAudio. Until the next time, I hope you all stay safe and stay warm. My bones popped during that very loudly. I'll probably go through great editing pain to get rid of that.